Welcome everybody. This is Hayriye Eşbah. I am the director of the Landscape Architecture Department at Istanbul Technical University. I welcome you to our Thursday seminar series. This semester, our seminar focuses on water and climate. Therefore, we have a very distinguished guests who have been working on these issues for a really long time and dedicated all their career and life. We have so far hosted Rafi Sekal, Gareth Doherty, and Jala Maksumi in the previous weeks. Today we are hosting a reputable Dutch landscape architect, Lodewijk Baljon. Hello again, Lodewijk, and thank you very much for being with us. Before we start, I would like to give a brief information about our keynote speaker. There are a lot of things that we can say about Lodewijk because he has good quality of work and many distinctions. Lodewijk Baljon is the director of Baljon Landscape Architects, the recipient of prestigious prizes for urban and landscape design. To name a few, the firm is the recipient of the National Public Space Prize, 2 times the American Society of Landscape Architects ASLA award winner. They have the Dutch Design Award, the German Design Prize 4 times, the National Building Prize 2nd time, 2 times International Landmark Award. Not only the professional practice, but the Lodewijk has taught at Leuven University, Amsterdam Academy for Architecture, as well as Harvard's Graduate School of Design. Lodewijk Baljon is an admirable landscape architect, critical writer, colleague, and on a personal level, a very dear friend to me. He welcomes our invitations for seminars and competitions in Turkey, and I really appreciate his time and his attitude. His thought-provoking speech in our Thursday seminar, which was in 2014, I believe, is still memorable. Although Lodewijk practices in the Netherlands, his work reaches out to the wider world. His sensitive approaches to the ecological context and his sociocultural statistics of a place always generate powerful and efficient design outputs. What I really admire Lodewijk is the fact that he connects with social and ecological phenomena simultaneously and translates them into design applications through creative experimentation. So that experimentation and experimental design is something that we can learn from Lodewijk. In a sense, his work is a quest for socio-ecological integrity, manageability, functionality, productivity, and all the good aspects that we pronunciate all the time and we aim to meet in our designs. Therefore, it's our great pleasure to have you here with us, Lodewijk, and everybody for their time. I would like to open the floor for your presentation now, and then after the presentation, we will have a discussions, question and answer section, and we are hoping to finish by 12:30 plus 5 minutes maybe, because I know that Lodewijk is also so busy. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your kind introduction. And I cherish the link that I personally have over the years with Istanbul in particular and the university also. For workshops in the 1990s, I already traveled to Istanbul, to your university, and also to the Mimar Sinan University, getting to know Turkish people and the city. And then later there were occasions, actually twice there was a lecture, I think, not only in 2014 but also in 2016. Linked to the fact that we were judging a very interesting competition. Now, to start with, I'll share the screen with you, and this should be it. Is it now with you?
We can see it, yes.
Okay, then I'll see if I can put it large. No, one second to get the technique okay. Now it should be okay. When you think of the Netherlands, you probably also think of water. So it's in that sense, it might be logical that we start talking about water. Water is a key element to the Dutch landscape. It is actually to every landscape. We're getting there because of the changes in the climate that also has a considerable influence on water in every way. And in our projects, I selected projects that demonstrate water best, but actually water is always part of our projects. Now, water is a system. Water works. That's why I choose this as a title for our lecture. But to get back, by the way, this is the group of people that I work with: landscape architects, urban designers, some technicians, but mainly all trained as designers. And here we're standing on the Dutch coast in one of our projects, where the key issue was, can we make something in this very valuable dune landscape that also has this recreational purpose? The main thing with this was, how can we tread lightly on the earth? I think then Kylie is one of the landscape architects who repeatedly said that, you know, we as professionals, landscape architects, we should tread lightly on this earth and make that possible through our projects and help people also to do that. Now, what we do, we make drawings, as everybody does. We like it. The type of drawings changes over the years. It becomes more 3D orientated, although we still make old-fashioned models, because that's kind of hands-on thing that gives a nice feeling. That coordination between hand and mind is important in sketching and also in model making. And we love it when it is made. We pay a lot of attention to the detail, that also the detail express what we want in the larger context, what our concept of landscape is about. But most of all, we enjoy when people start using it, sometimes in unexpected ways. All of these pictures, most of them I took myself. When I saw people going through the landscape that we've been designing, thinking of how it could be used, they always add an extra dimension to it when it really starts happening. And as a basis of our way of working are the key sustainability issues. It has no use if we make monofunctional projects. It has no use if our projects are not taking care of our planet, or make it closer on the level of a project. It takes care of the people that are living there and are part of the society there and have to use that space. Now, going back to the main theme about climate change and water, there's different aspects that we always try to get into vision in our projects. It's first of all, with water, it's the climate resilience issue. You know, when it rains, it pours really heavily. But also we experience also in the Netherlands hotter periods in the summer, longer periods with no rain. So the drought and rain are two specific items. You have to cater for both. And under the headline of sustainability, it's about the responsible use of water. You have in the Netherlands, key issue, and most other projects also, you infiltrate. That's the first, because it rains, it has to go in the ground. So infiltration is the first key. Reuse can also be a thing, that you store it for later use, could be for roof gardens, especially an issue. Retaining it when there is not enough capacity to infiltrate or store it for reuse is that you hold it back for at least a period, so that the drainage system in the surrounding areas, whether it's the sewage system or the preferably, of course, the open water, is not flooded immediately after a storm. So that's the retention. And another materials issue is, of course, of another sustainability issue is that use responsibly also the materials. We think a lot about the circularity of materials. How can they be reused? Maybe not next year, not in 10 years, but we also have to think ahead in 20 or 30 years time. And we also doing projects where we find materials that are already existing that we are ready to use or with small adaptation. So that is about sustainability. So we had climate, we had sustainability. Ecology is another one, because water systems are a network, and this network is a good idea to connect it with flora and fauna. So then you immediately get an ecology network, because isolated patches of the right type of vegetation and then do not attract the right fauna. It doesn't sustain for a longer period because it's too isolated. So connection is key in ecology, connection between living organisms, and water is usually, you can design water as a network, and by attaching flora and fauna to that, you get a nice and sustainable ecology network. But it's not all these, let's say, severe things. Water is play, water is an attraction, water is a relaxation, it is a healthy condition. It's an important issue also in the landscapes we design, especially, of course, in the urban scape. And it is about representation. You have a big pond. I'll show this in projects, all these items. It could be more formal and going about grandeur. It can also be more about another meaning, about cultural history. There are always items that water also represents or can represent in your design. So we go to the large scale first, and then we gradually go to the smaller projects. And this is a large scale project. You see here a work that can keep water out, but also let water through on certain moments that it is necessary. And this structure is 800 meters long, just to give you an idea. It's not fully on the picture, but in total it's 800 meters long. That gives an idea about what it is. This is very much about the key issues that I mentioned. And we are dealing in the Netherlands with rivers that get water from rain, but also from Germany, France, Belgium. And of course, when the water, when it rises, it starts flooding areas. And here you see one of the old cities along the river that is threatened by this extreme high water. And the prediction is that compared to what you see now in the picture, the water in this river, if we didn't do anything, could rise even more than 1 meter extra in extreme condition, maybe as much as 1.5, 2 meters. So that calls for action. And actually we did that. We were doing, there are several projects and over 30 projects related to high water safety in the rivers. And we did one of these. And for this city, that was a very important one because it would lower the extreme high water level when in use with as much as 70 centimeters. So that was quite a considerable project, because this is what's happening. You can see here, if you can find my cursor, this is the old dike. Somewhere normally the river is here, and when it rises, it floods areas. This is still normal, but when it rises even more, you get into problems. You see that there's also water behind the dike by seepage, but also because of heavy rain. And this is what we do. The picture just you saw is taken somewhere here. And what we did is create 2 new dikes with land in between that was cleared of. We had to remove 5 farmsteads. And this is the 800-meter long barrier that can open in extreme conditions. But in normal conditions, it stays closed. So normal high water, it's closed, but extreme. And they say that will happen once in 100 years. So we say once in a lifetime, this will work. It's in a huge expense, of course, but for our safety, to prevent cities from flooding, these kind of measures were necessary. And so the landscape is a whole build-up of the present situation of the river. This is the green river, so to speak. This is we made with 2 new dikes, a landscape. And then when it on extreme conditions, it will flood and do its purpose. So here you see when it's under construction, this is the new dikes. It's a fantastic project because dikes are so typically part of the Dutch landscape, but to create 2 new 9-kilometer long dikes parallel to each other was an interesting task. And so I'll flip through it. Be sure that it is a project that starts with the geomorphology of the area, the present topography, how the land is used, the water system, because there is also a working water system. And then we added the new dikes and what do you do with the rest of the landscape artifacts. And this is how it works. This is normal conditions. This is the inlet here, 800 meters long, as I said, nothing happening, everybody happy. Then it starts raining. With normal extreme high water, it will stay closed. But then once in 100 years, it rains so heavily that we'll open the gates and the water goes through this 9-kilometer detour. And it's a big structure. We have in this project big civil engineering objects, and we made them a family, bigger parts of it and smaller parts. Also, the small bicycle bridge is part of that family of design. We made a bird lookout. We made the pumping stations. All these elements were designed as to be part of one family. Also the landscape, we create a new landscape with the dikes that was designed with in mind at certain points, the turns of the dike make it interesting to cycle on the dike or through the landscape. So it's also a scenery that we design, like a park design, but then on a larger scale. And here you see a new dike. And we had to reconcile landscape on both sides. It's another image. This is a kind of boy's dream that you can add dikes to the Dutch landscape. And there was an existing stream, and we connected that, or canal actually, we connected that with a new ecological infrastructure. So we have an infrastructure of 9 kilometers long. That is an important connection. We have badgers living there. We had to move them to another place, and that you can do artificially. It was very fun to design that for a homestead for badgers, a wall for sand martins. Of course, it's still agricultural land. The farms are taken out, but it's still farmed arable land. So yeah, the cows also have to go over the dike. This is during construction, of course. And this is how we try to work with water. You need areas for amphibious new life. They are closed off the main canal and they're once linked to it. So that is the spawn area for young fish. And so you get a maximum ecological quality in this area. Here again, a picture of the whole thing under construction. As I said, we designed together with with an architect the architectural objects like the pumping station. This is how it looks with this skin around it, all the technical objects. So the engineers could do their job with all their artifacts, and we made a kind of screen around it. The bridges that we create that for the Green River, that when the water floods, it really have to be able to flow. So we made them as thin and in the landscape as unobstructed as possible. We had the fun of designing a bird lookout position, and that is how it works. And this is when it was ready. The new dikes that you see here, another dike over there, and normally this will be closed, so water will flood from the river, but once in a lifetime it will have to pass here. I will just flip through the images because of time. This is how it looks. This is the site where the water comes up, and this gives an impression how big it is, and that we created as much as possible an open situation so that you can see the landscape going. And just to give you the idea, this is a work that involves a lot of people. So we got twice an award, and then of course the main key players of the team are then celebrating it. But it is always you work with a big bunch of people to get this done. But it is interesting that a landscape architect, as I was, could have also a role not only as designer, but also in coordinating all the civil engineering in the project as well, from the aesthetic point of view. Now I'll take you to an older polder, which is approximately 150 years old. This is Amsterdam in 1800 or so. This was a huge lake. This is where now the airfield is, Schiphol Airport. And these are all older polders that were made in the 17th century. This was too big, but finally it was done. And we have two projects that I want to show. One is an old one. It's a very old one. I think I wrote it down, yes, ASLA award in 2004. So the project was even older. So 20 years ago, we already were working on how could water work in this polder in a new fashion, because the old fashion was just pump it out. But that is a bit too simplistic. There's more going on there. And we need to store water also for drier periods in the summer. So it's not always when it rains, you start pumping and get rid of all the water. You also have to store it. And we wanted to combine that with housing in a limited scale. So this is the plan. A lot of water storage in it, but these small black dots is housing or small apartment complexes, so that also you could make a landscape where people could live. Now we started, what our plan was to start by making first the clay, because it is rich old sea bottom, the rich clay, to first start as a process that we have seen in the last polders that we made in the IJsselmeer in the 1960s. And one area was kept separate and nature took its course, and how was that developing? And we learned from that, ecology-wise, how nature is developing on rich clay soil. So the idea was to play that same. We first put it underwater and then let this development go on. So in a number of years, you see gradually nature take its course, and we thought we play the same. We make it wet first, and then we start pumping again, and some will be drier, some will be more wet, and we can create different type of ecological niches, different habitats, which would make a very rich system. So this is explaining how it was done. And this is the idea that you have water, you have nature development, you have still some polder roads with poplars along it, and some housing. And this is then the animation of what we thought. You built a new water system. You first, when that is done, you make it wet, and then this the nature development really starts going on. And when that is somewhere in progress, it becomes a habitable world. And that is what we do. We have a limited amount of housing paying for all this development, by the way. Now, sorry for the 20-year-old animation. It would now be far more sophisticated, but it shows that what we intended. So there's a limited amount of housing and a lot of public or semi-public area that could be look like this. So a rich natural habitat with strong ideas about how people could live in all kinds of different types related to the nature and the water there. Could also be more forested. As shown in this picture, first we've inundated again a part of the polder, then we let the nature take its course. And if you don't cut it, if you don't graze it, over time, trees will grow, willows particularly. And when they are growing, we can also start build houses there, and people live there in community with the natural development. Now going to another area in the same polder. By the way, this plan was not executed. Now I'm talking about a plan that is under realization. And this, you see a big box on the construction, another big box. This is an area where big logistic boxes, but also smaller, but still very large businesses can develop. It's a 350 hectare site, which is pretty big. It's close to the highway. It's very close to Schiphol. And you see here the big logistics. Here you see a smaller scale, and here again a bit bigger scale. This is the master plan of a good 10 years ago. And what we did is to add to this system an ecological network. So along the old Polar Road with the old farmsteads, we created dense free-growing hedges around it. We made long connections together with water-related, the water system, but we also have areas that will develop in flora, fauna rich grassland that is here going on. This will be a storage facility for extreme water conditions. I will talk about it a little later. And here is a kind of huge scale landscape park under development. So also the ecological qualities of this area will improve, because at the moment it is just agricultural polder transforming to a more urban situation. This is the water system that will develop over time here. And the most interesting part is that normally it will function like this. It's a bit too much to really explain how it works. But you can imagine if you have these huge buildings and huge paved areas around it for the loading docks, etc., you get a massive amount of rain when it pours because it can't infiltrate. Also, infiltration is very difficult because it's on heavy clay. So we have to store in extreme conditions, we have to store the water. So first of all, with normal rain conditions, we make to let it travel a long way before finally it goes to the bigger water system. So we retain it in normal conditions. And in extreme conditions, we even have a very big buffer area that is normally relatively dry, but then we can flood it and store the water and then gradually release the water to the polar system. And now these boxes are under construction. These, just to give an idea, this is 250 meters long, one building. And in between, we have these open areas that we have the water system in. We have on the south facing so that it's good for amphibious. We have a gentle slope, a path that people can walk, another path that people can bike. And so in between the buildings, we will have a kind of ecological, but also recreational, interesting zone. And that is what we're developing here. So we use the water system as a basis, and then we add our ecology, so to speak, to it. We make conditions that favor a certain typology of flora and fauna, creating a new habitat. This is another small town that is on the shore, but the shore is not the sea anymore because this is part of the IJsselmeer. So almost 100 years ago, it changed from sea to a huge lake, and then gradually the polders were built there. But what you see is that this shallow area was used to build a big recreational park and parking place right in front of the historic city. And our plan is that we brought water back to its original position, created a lot of islands, and we made, together with urban planners, this plan. So all colored areas, except of course this fun park, we have under development presently. Most of this is executed, and we're working now on the last part of it. And this is what it was, you know, this the theme park here and a huge parking area, and here as well. And this is what we made of it. We made one beach island so that people right next to the inner city could have their recreational facilities. Lots of water where it used to be in the old days. And of course, bridges to the island with the theme park. And you see here the other islands in the distance. So this is new then. You see it's a small historic city. So here is the old gate to the city. And everybody enjoying it, swimming, and with a lot of recreational navigation. We like to design also our small objects in our projects. So this is the drawbridge, also very traditional Dutch system of making bridges, but this is then a modern version in steel. And this is the beach island, as you see, functioning very well on a nice summer's day. Also, this is part of adapting to a newer climate with more sunny and hot days, where you really want to go to an open area related to water with the coolness of the water nearby. Another project is an office project with a new office building and a pavilion and a big underground car park here. Now this looks all very nice, but this is how it looked when we started. There were also office buildings. The whole ground was taken up by buildings and parking facilities, but there was a nice edge of mature trees that we could save and make a link to the urban forest here next to it. So that is what we did. Make sure that the outskirts keep their ecological value, keep working in their ecological system, but also at the same time make connections to a small railway station, etc. And this is the build-up. So there's a parking garage underneath, the ecological, the green mantle around it, the new big pass system, the water system, the planting, etc. Now the water, what is the water in the system? Of course, it is an artificial system, because here in the pink is the underground car park. And so we collect the water. There is a slight slope on the top of the car park. It will drain to the edges, but but very slowly we try to maintain a certain water level at the bottom of the substrate of this artificial land that we create on top of the car park. And what we have in excess goes to an infiltration either or to a buffer. First in the buffer, if that's too much, it goes to infiltration in the underground. But from the buffer, we can recirculate the water and keep it going, keep it clean, keep it cool, keep it healthy, and with our edges that people can sit there and enjoy very much. This is a emergency exit and skylight for the underground car park, by the way. And we try to create an ecology that adds to the urban forest that is right next to it. We had to deal with wind. There was a huge wind problem because the building is 90 meters tall. And so we built this screen to sort of keep the winds from the ground level so that you could easily stay in the garden also on days that there is more wind. And this is how it looks now with the green screens, just to temper the wind, the big water system that is part of this circulation, and people enjoying it. And at the center, we made these light objects. It's a node where people come together, where people who work there meet people who are living in the city. And at that node, we thought we do this courtship of these birds. They sort of turn their necks around each other, and that is what these two light masts also do. So this is the overall picture. In the pavilion is also a cafe, a restaurant. And we made a detailed design because for the 10,000 square meters on top of the parking garage, we planted that with perennials, ornamental grasses, etc. So 55,000 plants in over 200 different species. And this is how that works. And this is how it looks after growth in the first year. And this is how it looks after a couple of years. And this is what we aim for. And we're very pleased that the garden is so rich in textures and colors. But it's not only for people very enjoyable. There's also variety of insects and birds that attracts the urban, the ecologist of the city is very happy with how it is developing. And then some other images, the water system with one artificial edge where you can sit and get close to the water, and one ecological bordering with this marshy vegetation. And that's how the birds perceive this area. Okay, then we go to another park that is also on an artificial underground, because they dug a tunnel here for the railway, and on top of it is a long but not very wide park. And we worked specifically together in this project with the university, the Technical University in Delft, to make sure that this would have the most possible positive effect on the urban climate. So what is there to do? Now, of course, it's small. So we have in the center, we have this path. We have some bridges to make it more interesting and have the swings under it. And one part of it is connected to the railway station with a huge, or for Dutch standards, a large bus station as well. It's all paved because, yeah, that's what buses need. And the university made models and said it's going to be very hot there. So you know, the more red, the more purple. So can you do something about it? And then we started thinking, yes, all this paving right at the top of our park. We made a waterworks, a fountain kind of thing that you can play in, but also with the water evaporation will cool the area. And so they also predicted the effect of this system, this object, this water element, and we got some extra budget because of its positive effect on the local climate. This is still a rendering. It's under construction. So next year, if we somehow meet, I can show you how it has developed. This is another project. This is how the architect dreamt his idea of making water around his building. It's a huge office building, and around it was a artificial pond, a mirror, nothing in it, shallow water. This is 100 meters long and 30 meters wide. So only this part of the pond is already big, but it didn't function. It became green pea soup. After already a couple of months, they drained it, and this is how it looked for more than a decade. And then finally they found budget to start renovating it. And they didn't want the same, but they wanted still a representative image of the pond. But also they said, you know, the world is changing. We don't want this clean water thing. We want the water also to be alive. Can you combine that? That was the question. So we started designing, and this is only the first phase that is now realized. And as you can see, we make still water. There's still a big reflection part of it, but we also made strips of vegetation, and we made a boardwalk through it so that you can get close to it. And then here next to it, it's still under development. We made areas where it's not so much water, but it's more for people and vegetation there. And this is how it's under construction. So we dug out a deeper pond and relined it so that it is it holds its water now. And you can see these boxes because the planting will be relatively open. And this is how it looks now. You know, it's you know, just a couple of months in function. In the boardwalk, by the way, we use these old beams that come from big civil engineering constructions that you use in waterworks. And actually the gray of that, the natural gray, works pretty well with the gray lining the verticals in the architecture. So we thought, let's do that and make them extra long here as a kind of gateway. And you see that one is different because this is where we flood, the water is circulated and goes through this line. And there are special plants that clean the water even better than the others. And with the movement of the water, it gradually gets cleaner and cleaner. So it still has to grow a little bit, but you can see the basic idea that you limited the growth of the plants, and the plants are relatively open. This will stay relatively open so that you keep the whole surface of water in vision, but at the same time, you have the vegetation. And with the vegetation comes all kinds of natural life. And here you can see just the people here standing at the edge, and you get an idea of the scale of it. And some details. And here how it lands. This is the old concrete edge of the basin, and nicely cut in the wood. This is a detail, a tiny detail, but it's also expressing what we try to achieve with our projects, with our designs as landscape architects, and that it's connected. So they don't meet hard, they sort of get together there. And in the end, the water in this special cleaning part gradually drops back to the pond. And from the air, you see how the system of the stripes works. Now, I see that I have to start moving fast. I want to now show a project, an urban project. In the landscape, you have space to deal with the water and all the aspects that I try to emphasize climate sustainability, ecology, recreation. In the urban area, it's more about the density and what you can you make the water visible and attractive. So it might be more about representation and recreation, but at the same time, this is also a very cooling element in a landscape. By the way, underneath here is a full parking level. This was still, these cars are not supposed to be there because there was still some construction going on. But in the end, this is a big square. Markets can be held here. It's a new big residential development within the center, a combination of housing and shops and offices. And we designed the whole area, but specifically we wanted a huge attraction in the center, playful, and that is a water feature. Water in all kinds of different ways, as is seen. So it's mirroring, but it is falling, it is streaming, it is jumping, etc. And this is how the kids use it, and it is always wonderful. And it is not. It is in any day during the summer you can find kids playing here. It works fantastically. Also, the parents love to sit here on the edges and watch everything happening there. So this is actually pretty normal condition, and it is active. And in one other part of this area that we're working on, we bring it to a kind of extreme, the combination of a sculpture with water and planting in between these grand stairs that are part of a big cultural act with theater and more art installations and cultural facilities. And this is how we work with small sketches. What we have to, of course, this is not cheap, it's not easy to run and operate, so we have to express what we really want to our clients, and also then just simple sketches also doesn't always have to be these beautiful renderings. Now, I think this is the last project I want to show you. It's the smallest scale. It's an office building, and the office building is made as much as possible of reused elements. So there's hardly any new materials used in this building. That makes it very, very special. And it's a building where young startup businesses work, an office building. And this is, you know, if we show the elements, we designed a good entry here with the terrace. Then you go through kind of glass house, greenhouse, which is, and then you enter the garden where we have this water feature. And in all, also the architects were very, very much involved to make a kind of circular movement, that we reuse materials, that we take care of our environment, that we create a very healthy environment for people, but also for the natural life. And this is how the water system works. When it rains, it falls in these basins, and there is an overflow system so that there is always water running through the system. And you have these different circular elements. So we want that there's always water going on. But when it rains, we take a part in the buffer. Out of the buffer, it gradually infiltrates into the underground. But one part is always used to store for a longer period. And we can reuse that in the system when it is dry. And we can also reuse it for flushing toilets. And this is how it looks from up there. Of course, on the roofs, all the solar panels, but you see these big water elements in the garden. It's very enjoyable. It makes a nice sound that it drops from one to another because it's circulating. It's healthy water. In the buffer, it cools back, and we can bring it back in the system when it is dry in a dry period. And that is how it works and how it looks. Again, the same system. And another one, I'm now trying to go to the point where we sort of wrap up this presentation. For our office, a sustainable landscape is all about a design that can last. And that means that we create an environment that serves many functionalities. It means that it can work in different ways for different groups, for different periods of the day. So that is important. That it is adaptable over time, of course, and also that it is aesthetically long-lasting. And I put these pictures at the bottom to indicate that, yes, our life is changing, but there are things that are still the same. So 100 years ago, people stood at the curb reading a newspaper, and now everybody is waiting and looking at their phone. But it is not that different. You know, we are still the same people. Life is going faster, yes, but I think that landscape architecture could always go back to the basics, what people need and what our environment needs. And that is what we try to do. And that is what I try to do with my team here in Amsterdam. So far, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Lodewijk. It is impressive as usual. And it's so wonderful to see some of the projects that I was following, like the city garden Groningen, is making progress, that ecology is on the side, is expressing itself thoroughly. And then there's also playing the last one, which is a really small scale, but very powerful again. So you use the water not only as a neutral element, but to complement the architecture and also as a piece of art, in a structural realm. In that is telling us that the water, the notion of water, the material of water is very flexible, and that also give our designs a flexibility, and the way that we adapt to the new conditions around us, not only climatic-wise or ecological-wise, but also social-wise. Our lifestyles are changing, and so the water gives us a really good framework to adapt to those kinds of conditions to make habitable urban conglomerations actually in the 21st century. Thank you very much. It's all very efficient design, very beautiful and nice set of work. And I'm opening the floor for the questions now. If anybody wants to take on, please do so. So you can write it on the chat box and I will read it. Until the questions comes, I have one question. Do you observe any kind of changes in the behavior, relationship of people with the water because of the climate change? I mean, we know that your country always have a lot of water. The scarcity of the water is a problem for you guys, but with the climate change, I'm sure that is also changing. Yes. What kind of reactions or adaptations of the culture of the people are happening in your neck of the woods?
Well, if you had asked me the question in 2014, I would say that there is still a lot of work to be done to convince people that we should not stick to the old system of getting rid of our water as soon as possible. I mean, the whole the whole water system of the Netherlands was focusing on making sure that the water gets to the sea as fast as possible. But now, after some dry summers and hot summers, and people really start seeing what was happening. So, and that makes it a lot easier to convince people that the climate is changing, and that one of the things is that we have longer periods of hot, dry weather. So, but also it could be that normally in spring we had an abundance of rain, but now it could be that there is no rain or hardly any rain in April. Just when everything, the whole ecological system is getting alive after winter dormant period. So that was really a wake-up call when this was happening 2 years in a row. So now people understand that we also have to conserve our water. It's not only stay safe behind our dikes and barriers and so on, and have our canals to flood the water, to let the water go fast. We now have to also operate in a way that we keep it and store it, and so that is one critical thing. And at the same time, we have to also be prepared for extreme rains. And this summer there was an extreme rain condition, and it led to big floodings in Germany and Belgium. And I don't think that the Germans expected that they would lose 150 people in that flood, that was possible in their civilized, well-run country. And they had 50 billion euro damage. They hadn't anticipated that. In the Netherlands, very luckily, we already were adapting to this change, and there was damage, but far more limited. And but there was enough damage to show everybody that we were not there yet, that there still has to be done more. But we've been working now on this for quite a while, and the general public is picking up that this is really an investment worth to do.
Sure. And that clearly shows the importance of the green infrastructure. And compared to my country, the Netherlands, the Germany, most of the European countries are much better in terms of these green networks. But with these unexpected weather events, we need to look at them one more time and readapt ourselves to the new conditions. And in your country and in my country, we need to make even bigger steps, and then that time is running out. In Turkey, we have a really long extended the drought periods. I mean, because of the Mediterranean effect, our landscapes were always arid, and we have to be sensitive about collecting the water, reusing the water, and then our interest is in the history. We have all these good examples, but during the history, somehow we lost connection with those smart approaches to the water-sensitive cities of the Roman and the Ottoman times. And so we are just looking for alternatives. And I was wondering if you have any experience with the more like an arid type of landscape. Do you have any projects in the southern part of the world?
Yeah. In the initial version of my presentation, I had a project that we undertook in Jordan, in a huge refugee camp, Zaatari, and at some point it housed over more than 100,000 people. It's close to the Syrian border, and it's of course extreme arid conditions. But they also have rain every now and then they had floods. So because the total amount of people living in that refugee camp was now back to more normal condition, but it is still a small town with 80,000 people, that we could do a kind of reorganization of the urban space, of the public space. And also just outside the camp, we could make a proposal for a park, which was also let's say, a water harvest spot. So I don't have them ready now, those images, but working under these conditions, and that you really have to be very careful. And then you can say, okay, if I do all this, then maybe these 3 trees will grow instead of just, laying out a whole park. But the importance of green infrastructure and a sound water system that responds to the local conditions was a very interesting task to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody? I can keep going all day long with Lodewijk, but I'd like to give you also a chance if you have any questions, please.
Well, if there is still a pressing question, I'd like to take it, but otherwise
Right. Okay. Well, it seems like it was a very rich presentation, and everybody has received a lot of messages here. And thank you very much for your time, Lodewijk. It's always a pleasure to see you and talk to you. And I'm looking forward to a real interaction one of the following years if we can get through these pandemics. And I wish you and your team the best for all. And Happy New Year, by the way, it's coming.
Well, thank you also very much. Thank you for your attention and everybody being logged in. And it's not the way to really have an interesting exchange. That is problematic, but I hope that I could, with describing the way we handle water in our work, give an idea of the importance and how you can incorporate it on different levels and with different aspects, and also make sure that you make a landscape that we can enjoy all. And good luck, everybody, and thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Everybody. Have a nice day.